depends on what you're looking for. So we'll let it cook for a little bit longer, and then we'll add the sugar and the other ingredients. So in the meantime, these are looking good. We were hoping to use two saute pans at the same time, but the fan was just too noisy, so we thought, okay, a few at a time. So this is it for now, and
so at what point in the applesauce do you add the rest of the seasoning, the sugar and the zest?
So, you know, the recipe says that you leave it for 10 minutes cooking with the lid on, and then once the 10 minutes are up, then you can start doing it. And I can see that they're definitely falling apart. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. I'm going to go ahead and add the sugar, and it's not a very sweet recipe. And this is the lemon zest. Used a little bit of orange, and this is the cinnamon, and that's it. So it's an easy recipe. These are all easy recipes. It doesn't call for a lot of ingredients. So it's healthy all the way till you get to the latkes because they're fried. But if you let them sit on paper towels, then it takes away some of the calories. Okay, so then once you added the sugar, the cinnamon, and the rind, you leave it uncovered, and it's going to go for an additional few minutes, which I think it is 10 more minutes, and then it's done. And you can leave it in the refrigerator. You can cool it and leave it in the refrigerator for a few days, so you can definitely make all of this in advance, except for the latkes. I know that some people make latkes in advance, and then they put them in the freezer. You can put them in the freezer in a pan like this. And once they drain their oil, you take the paper off and then you put them in the pan, but do one layer at a time, and that way you can reheat them in the oven and crisp them up before you're gathering. So nowadays we're not gathering with a lot of people, so we don't need to freeze.
Miriam, are you a sour cream, an applesauce, or a both?
Well, when you're having the brisket, of course, there's no sour cream involved unless you buy the canola bark or whatever else. I'm an applesauce person. I don't care for the sour cream, but okay. So here we go. These are looking good. I wish you could be here. Really, the smell is amazing.
Do you have a preference of kind of oil?
We use vegetable oil. You can use vegetable oil or canola oil. Well, either one of those. You wouldn't want to use olive oil or anything stronger flavored. Or you can use grapeseed oil as well, because that doesn't have any flavor. And that you can cook for quite a long time before it gets it starts acquiring flavors, I guess. Oh, these are good. Okay.
You can, though, smell everything. If you come to the day, you can smell it in the hallways. You should come and work out. And then on your way to the gym, you'll get all the smells from the kitchen.
Yeah.
All right, so do you want to tell us a little bit about the brisket? I know that
Yes.
I already cooked it a little bit before.
Yes.
But we can talk a little bit about the seasoning for the brisket.
All right, perfect. So for the brisket, the only trick with this brisket is that you have to marinate it for a couple of days before you cook it. But it's worth it because the flavors of the spices really get into the meat, and then it tastes like no other brisket you've had. You know, it's really good. So the spices are a little bit more my style, which is a Mediterranean flair type of spices. So it's got a little bit of cinnamon and allspice and cloves and ginger and that kind of thing. And then so you saute the brisket, and you once it marinates for 2 days, you saute the brisket on both sides, and then you put it in a pan like this. Well, after you sauteed onions. And to this, we added also carrots. So you might want to put it in your notes if you care for carrots, because it just makes a better presentation, and it just gives it more flavor to the dish. So I can go ahead and take the brisket out and start it.
Yeah.
Right?
The ginger is ground ginger. All the spices are ground.
Yes. Yeah. So this is looking like it's almost ready, and it hasn't cooked for very long. So this can be done in no time. The only thing is the peeling of the apples. So if you peel the apples and then you have one of those apple what do you call those? The one that
Oh,
apple
so it's
slicer.
an apple slicer, so it has the core in the center, and then it does
wedges.
wedges,
So,
exactly.
so then the wedges are easy to cut into 1-inch pieces. So that takes a lot less time than doing that. Okay, so the apple sauce is ready.
So we're gonna look at this brisket.
This 10
So-
pound brisket is quite
So this
big.
brisket was ordered from Blueberry Hill, but this is what it would look like if you got it at Trader Joe's, or
It's half the size.
half the size.
Or even
The Trader Joe's is half the size.
Yeah, the Trader Joe's is half the size.
I was following your recipe.
Yeah.
So this is cooked.
It is.
This is after it was cooked, it was
Yeah.
bigger. All right, we'll bring it up here so you can see both.
So the way to do a brisket, or a roast or anything like this, is to go ahead and do the cooking, and then if you have enough time to refrigerate it overnight, the more it cools in the refrigerator, the easier it's going to be to slice it, and then it's going to stay in a beautiful shape so that you can serve it for company. So I'll go ahead and start slicing that and putting.
So I'm confused. So you got this brisket, say, like 5 days ago,
Right.
and then you spiced it up
You spice it up.
in that liquid.
No. You spice it up just the way it comes. You spice it on the top and on the bottom.
Like a rub.
Exactly. You put it in a Pyrex, like a glass dish, so there's no turning of, you put it in a metal. I don't know. There's things about putting metal with all these spices. So in a glass dish, you leave it in the refrigerator for 2 nights. And then you take it out and you put it in a big saute pan, or
In this dish.
Yeah, and you saute it for you fry it for one side on one side, and then you fry it on the other side, and then you start cooking it after you saute the onions, you start cooking it without any juice, but the brisket will release a lot of water. So most of this liquid that you see here, it's already reduced, but it's mostly the brisket that has reduced all of its juices.
Oh, wow.
So here's the brisket, and then you can go ahead, like you see, there's a lot of fat that comes on the brisket, and you don't necessarily have to keep it if you don't care for it. So I usually remove as much as I can and just discard it. But so the brisket goes, the
Grain.
grain is going this way. You don't want to cut it this way because it'll fall apart. It'll be like shredded meat. So you have to cut it against the grain. So this is what they mean by against the grain. And then you can do the slices as thin as possible. The beautiful thing about refrigerating it overnight is that you can make it very, very thin slices, and you can actually have leftover sandwiches or things like that.
So it spent 2 days with a rub on it in the refrigerator.
Correct.
Then you cooked it in the pan.
Yes.
And how long, it depends on how big the brisket is, but is that a full day? Is this like a turkey, or is that like an hour or two? What does that look like?
It cooks for 3 hours.
You cook for 3 hours. Yeah, 2 hours without the beef broth and without the tomato puree, and 1 extra hour with those 2 liquids added to it. And then once the 3 hours of cooking goes by, then you take it out, let it cool a little bit, and you put it into the refrigerator if you can. If not, let it rest for about a half an hour. Cover it with foil, and then you can carve it and serve it at the same time.
So if you cooked it the day before, and as you said, put it in the refrigerator,
Yes.
and now you're slicing it and it's easy, how would you go about warming this up for a family dinner?
So you can go ahead and put it all in a Pyrex form, and then you pour the liquid with the onions and the carrots over it, and you put it in foil. That's in your that you put it up overnight or whenever, however many, a couple days you can put like that in the refrigerator, and then you can put it in a 350-degree oven for I would say 30 to 40 minutes, and then serve it. So this is done. I'm going to just turn this off. The applesauce is done, and then we will continue with a little bit more of the meat. Any other questions for now, Miriam?
So we had one question about the potatoes. The recipe calls for 6 to 7 russet potatoes.
Yes.
For the size for those potatoes, is there like a certain amount that you're looking for of sliced potatoes at the end?
It's probably equivalent to like 4 cups, including the onions, the grated onions. 4 cups of shredded potatoes. So we use big potatoes, but you can use whatever size. And you can also use like the Yukon Gold potatoes. Okay, so I think we can do that. So you can see, I mean, it's quite easy to slice, and besides the marinating and cooking for that long of a time, it's really not a very complicated dish. So it's and then you'll come over here and you'll see what the sauce looks like, which is a lot. I mean, I don't remember the recipe says. I think it's how many onions?
It's 12 cups of onions.
12 cups of onions. I was gonna say.
I cut about 4 or 5 large onions.
So this is the reduced liquid with a lot of onions and the carrots, and like I said, because of the spices, if you came in and you smell this, you would just want to eat it. So here's the brisket, and the applesauce is all set, and I know. And of course, I prefer to serve the applesauce warm, but you can serve it room temperature as well. So. The magic of the kitchen. There we go. Applesauce. And then we're back to the latkes. And these are looking mighty good.
Okay, does anyone else have any other questions? You can either write it in the chat, or if you want to unmute yourself for a minute.
Yeah.
I'm actually going to add another pan. We can get that heated up if you
Oh, that's
like.
good. Yeah.
There's a question about the brisket. Can you clarify, like, how do you know how long to cook it? Is it by pound, a certain length of time by pound?
Well, this recipe is specific about cooking it for 2 hours. I've done it most of the time when I do it at home. I actually, once you cook it on both sides, to brown it on both sides, then I stick it in a slow cooker. I have one of those bigger slow cookers, so you can go ahead and put it in the slow cooker. And I honestly feel like you could put the beef broth and the tomato puree at the same time and just leave it cooking all day at home. And then at night take it out and either let it rest and slice it, or take it out and put it in the refrigerator and slice it the next day. But the slow cooker works wonders.
And then just a clarification about the different stages. So the brisket first got, we first braised it on a pan just with oil and the dry rub that it had on it. I had it dry before braise it. Once it was braised, I cooked the onions until they were translucent. And when the onions were translucent, then you add the brisket to the onions. You cover that up, and it cooks with the onions for 2 hours. The first 2 hours it cooks with the onions, and then you add the broth and the tomatoes, and then it cooks for another hour.
I think the recipe has it, has it in like step 1, step 2, step 3. If you follow the recipe, you can't go wrong. It's really well written. Any other questions? Please unmute yourselves if you like, so that we can feel like we're having conversations.
We have preschool kids walking by.
Oh, they want to come in so bad. So obviously, if you want them the latkes to cook faster, you can make them thinner. But I don't know. I grew up in a household that we like things big. And actually, growing up, having Sephardic backgrounds, we really didn't have latkes growing up.
That was going to be my question.
Yeah.
Did you have latkes?
No, we didn't. But, we came to America and we adopted a really good tradition.
We have a question here. Do sweet potato latkes cook faster?
They tend to cook a little bit less, not as fast as potatoes, because they're harder than the potatoes. So, I think these are probably correct. Put this right here. So I'm going to take these out. So here's one way, and other way, all nice and crisp. And then you can have an oven on, and you can stick them in the oven once they drain. You take the paper towels off, of course, and put them in the oven so that you can keep on frying them and then have them ready when everybody is.
Would your oven be at like 250, or where would it be?
I would put it
I
at
think I wrote it in the recipe. I think I wrote it at 350.
350, yeah. 350 seems to be the magic number. Everything cooks at 350.
When I put them in the oven, I put them on a cookie rack. And
On
so
the rack, like
that keeps them, keeps them nice and crisp.
That's a great idea, because then it gets the heat from the bottom too. That's a very good idea. So you can put one of these cookie sheets and put a cookie rack on top, and
Exactly.
and then put the latkes on top. So that's a really super idea. I'm not used to Zoom. Sorry, guys.
This is recorded. We'll have it available, although I did miss the first couple of minutes. But most of it is recorded. All right, so I have a question for everyone while Miriam is finishing to cook the latkes. So I know we talked about the being able to use sweet potatoes. And last year in one of my classes, we did a few different options of latkes. So what kind of different latkes have you made in the past? I'd like to see it in the chat, or if you want to unmute yourself.
Well, this is Julie. I just have to say I'm a purist. I have to have my regular Hanukkah's potato. I'm an adventurous eater, and every year I think about doing something else, but I can't give up my regular potato latkes.
You can make both, a little bit of this and a little bit of that. Doesn't hurt.
I've done zucchini before. It is a little wet though. We call them squashkas because it's from squash.
My friend Beth Elster makes falafel latkes with chickpeas. Actually, I think it's her daughter who came up with the recipe.
Wow. That sounds heavenly.
With spices that are more like falafel. So it has ground chickpea in it.
Right. Well, one of the latkes that we did last year had a mixture of vegetables in addition to beets. We can really use any root vegetables. You just need to like the zucchini as well. Sometimes you need to make sure that you get all of the juices out. You want to get as much of the juices out. So surprisingly, carrots have a lot of water in them as well. So when I use the carrots, you can do a mixture with carrots, zucchini, beets, sweet potatoes. You just want to make sure that you take enough of the liquids out. Oh, lots of video. There we go.
I mean, honestly, you can fry anything and it'll taste good, right? It doesn't matter what it is.
Yeah. Another option, actually, suggestion for those of you that don't necessarily want to stand over the stove top and cook it. I had to make latkes the past couple of days with Club J Kids. And since I didn't want them frying it with the oil flying everywhere, they shaped it. And I had these trays that had oil on them. And then the kids put the latkes onto the tray with the oil, and I baked them with the oil on the sheet tray.
Oh, that's
So
brilliant.
it was in the oven the same as you would do on the frying pan, but in the oven. So you cook it until it's golden on one side, and then you flip them over, put them back in the oven, and you cook that at about 425.
How much oil did you put in there?
I didn't put that much. I put it's maybe like a quarter of an inch. But you want enough of a layer so it won't stick as well.
But then you have to flip them halfway.
Yeah, yeah. And obviously if you see, so sometimes the oven isn't level. Like I noticed, so the oil will all go to one end. So you want to make sure that the whole tray will have enough oil so it doesn't stick on those ends. And if you need to just add a little more, it'll just cool off a little bit. So you need to make sure it heats up again.
Mm-hmm.
You still smell like oil at the end. It doesn't alleviate that.
Yeah. I have a couple of friends that have the electric fryers, and so they go to the backyard and fry all their latkes there, and then the house doesn't smell, and it's just perfect.
Yeah.
And,
That's what we do.
and those are the friends that put them in the freezer, and they just reheat them and they perfectly.
We don't do that, but we also now have 5 teens, so the teens are in charge of the latkes.
There you go. Good delegating. Yes.
All right, so we've talked about the latkes. Any special applesauces anyone's made? These are the foods for the holidays.
Mm-hmm.
You could do flavor of your applesauces a little bit. Has anyone here made any different applesauce, anything besides just pure apples?
I have a question. My mom used to make applesauce, and she put in those little candy, the red hots. Do you know what I'm talking? They're tiny little candies they're cinnamon red hots, and so it turned red and it had that cinnamon flavor. And I don't know.
So that's instead of adding cinnamon, you add the red hot candies. Okay.
Oh, that sounds good.
They were it was great. I'd like to learn how to do that, but it's too late to ask.
I was going to suggest also, after the applesauce cook, if you don't want them chunky like that, you can take one of those immersion blenders and blend it all so that it's a pretty soft consistency rather than just having big chunks. the option.
So one of the applesauces that we did last year is, and I know Julie tried it, was a cranberry applesauce. So you can use the frozen cranberries and add those when you cook the apples as well.
Or fresh. So we did that this year. We did half regular and half cranberry. We used fresh cranberry.
Okay.
And it's pink and delicious.
Wow.
Yeah, I make applesauce without peeling the apples. And
Esther, I wanted to hear someone tell me I could do that.
yes, you can do it, but it's going to have texture. It doesn't stay as hard as Miriam might have thought. It does soften up a bit, and I only use cinnamon. I don't even add sugar. So it's apples and covered with water just to the top of the apples. I slice the apples. I do not chunk them. And the applesauce does turn a bit pink if you use a reddish apple. My very favorite apple is a pippin, but they're almost impossible to find. I like a really tart applesauce, but I use Honeycrisp, and it's just so it'll turn a pinkish color. So, and if you don't want the skin, you just move it out of the way. But it's it's different. Good.
When I was in junior high, we had foods in 7th grade, and we learned to make applesauce, and it was with the skins. And then while the applesauce was cooling, you would, after mushing them, you would pull them out, and it was like a treat because it was already sweet because it probably had some sugar in it too. And it was just like a treat. You know, the skins were delicious, but that's how they taught us in 7th grade. I also had asked what if she didn't grow up eating latkes, what did you grow up eating for Hanukkah?
I couldn't hear the
What's the question again?
Since you didn't eat latkes growing up, what did you eat for Hanukkah traditionally when you were growing up? Which is Sephardic.
You know, I honestly don't. I know that we had brisket. We probably had just, you know, regular vegetables that were spiced, like stuffed vegetables, because you know we grew up with a lot of different vegetables that were stuffed with rice and ground beef and pine nuts and then all these herbs and all that. That would be something that we would have for Hanukkah, and then the brisket and yeah, that was.
Did you have,
our tradition.
Miriam,
Yeah,
did you have some
vegetables.
Did you have jelly donuts, Miriam, or
No
fried
jelly donuts.
Miriam, where did you grow up?
I grew up in Mexico City, but my parents are from Damascus originally. Then they lived in Beirut. That's where they met and they got married, and then they moved to Mexico. So I still have all those traditions. And my husband is from Turkey, so he has a lot of the same traditions that we do. So it wasn't until we came to America and we decided, okay, this is quite the deal. The latkes.
Latkes are good.
Yeah.
All right, should I show you her? They've set it up.
Yeah.
There's a dinner. You want to show off for us?
So we have the latkes and then the applesauce and the brisket, and you know, it's up to you. We can put more of the sauce that has the onions and the carrots, and the dinner is ready. We just need the guests to arrive.
We wish you all were here.
Yeah. Does anyone have any other questions before we go ahead and turn the cameras off and try this food?
Well, Lauren, I think you should try it before we turn the cameras on.
Come on over.
Let me grab a knife. Okay, I don't normally eat when I cook. I do eat. But Julie can tell you that I normally give everyone else the food.
But on this one, you only did half of the food, so it's okay. You can eat it. You can eat it.
And I wasn't sure that I was gonna like the spices because it is a sweeter brisket than I'm used to,
Right.
but it's delicious.
Okay. good.
Yay, all right.
Maybe get a little bit of apple.
Uh-oh, hey, in the room, we have a problem.
Oh, that's okay. That's a computer.
Where do you get kosher beef stock from?
Kosher what?
Beef stock.
I got it. Where did I get it?
They have it in the supermarkets, honestly.
They do?
They do. They have it in their little Jewish section
Oh,
where the manuscripts, chicken broth and beef broth and all that. It's
Yeah, so I think I got it at Albertsons.
okay.
In the kosher section, they'll have the vegetable, chicken, beef. They'll have all the different kosher stocks. Not at Trader Joe's.
Not a Trader Joe's, no.
No. All right, that was definitely delicious.
Oh, good.
Any other questions before we leave?
Yeah, who gets to eat the latkes? Thank you, Miriam.
You're
All
very
right, thank you,
welcome.
everyone.
Thank you.
And those of you that were missing the recipes, I will be sure to send them to you. And if you have any questions, please feel free to email me, and we'll see you at our next program.
Bye, everybody. Thank you so much.